killers from 1 to 10. Do you think you're one of the best of all time?
I rate myself as probably number one.
So that's pretty damn good, isn't it?
That's pretty good, yeah.
In Seattle today, a man called the Green River Killer has finally confessed to murdering 48 women and girls, making him the most prolific serial killer in American history. His name is Gary Ridgway. From Seattle, ABC's Neil Karlinski.
Gary Ridgway killed so many women it took nearly an hour to read all the charges.
I strangled Cynthia Hines to death. Is that your statement, Mr. Ridgway?
Yes, it is.
Is it true?
Yes.
One at a time, Ridgway admitted killing 48 women, usually dumping their bodies in the Green River near Seattle.
I strangled Opal Mills to death. Dolores L. Williams. I strangled Deborah Estes to death.
Yes.
There were nearly 100 relatives in court. They wept as the prosecutor read Ridgway's written confession.
I killed so many women, I have a hard time keeping them straight. I wanted to kill as many women I thought were prostitutes as I possibly could. Is that true?
Yes.
I picked prostitutes because I thought I could kill as many of them as I wanted without getting caught.
The Green River murders terrorized Seattle in the 1980s. Ridgway, a suspect for nearly 20 years, was arrested in 2001 after DNA testing matched him to the crimes.
You went to a lot of work to create these ruses, and it sounds to me like you had a series of ruses that you had kind of in your hip pocket. Which ruse would work with which woman? I mean, you had to have a way of feeling them out and saying, I think ruse number 1, 2, 3 will work with this woman. Explain that process to me.
Well, one of them was, a woman would get in the car.
She's already in the car?
She's in the car. Let's say she's always in the car. We're driving down the road, and she wants to see my ID. So I whip out my ID, and with my ID would be I'd put my finger over my driver's license to hide my name. But on the opposite side was pictures. And a picture of my son. And they would see my son, and they would know I was probably a normal person.
But you were really using your son as part of your ruse.
Because at the time I didn't want to picture my ex-wife there, so I had to have a picture of my son.
Sure, you had to make it sound good.
I had a driver's license on one side, my ID, and then when I showed and then the next picture was my son. So that was, and in the vehicle I had always had some, not always, but had some of my son's stuff in there, that he left in there, or some Star Wars or something like that, so it was like a family setting.
In your vehicle?
Yeah, so every time I opened up my wallet, there would be a picture of my son on one side, behind my ID. There's my ID. I hide my name, flip it over, and there's my ID and my son's picture on the back side, and they'd see that, and that would lower any big defenses. And kids' toys, 8-year-old toys on the dash.
The only thing that would be better than that would be to have your son in the car with you. That would be a incredible ruse.
That happened once.
What happened?
It was July 18th, I think it was my brother's birthday. That weekend I picked up a woman on Back Highway, and Matthew was next to me in the seat, and she hopped in, and I took her over to in the South Airport area, and took her into an area, and my son was there, and I killed her. I'm real sure my son didn't see it. but that only happened one time.
But that was a pretty good ruse.
Mm-hmm.
So why didn't you do it again?
Well, for one thing, I didn't want my son to see that happen again, because that's when I was really killing a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing, it never came to an opportunity again to do it. I had him in my truck one time. He was sleeping, and I picked up another prostitute, but I didn't date her. I didn't really think I had an urge to kill her. I just wanted her to stop. And
What did you want to do to her?
what did I want to do with her? Just to have her stop and
But how would you
Again.
do it? What did you think in your head about how you would do it? That's what we're trying to get at. When did you first think about treating your mom violently to get what you wanted her to do?
probably in 4th grade.
Okay, there we go. Fourth,
The 5th and the 6th was probably up to that grade.
and
And-
what was in your mind that you wanted to do to get her to treat you a certain way? What did you want to do to your mom here?
I wanted her to stop being angry at me for not knowing how to.
But she wasn't stopping,
No, she wasn't stopping.
was she?
No.
She kept picking at you, belittling you, embarrassing you. I mean, that was pretty clear from yesterday.
It happened in school too, so I had.
So what was your way of retaliating against her in your mind? And what were you thinking to do to your mom?
I don't know if I was thinking of hurting her. I just wanted her to stop and let me alone. Angry at her for pushing on me to remember, and I just couldn't remember, and I just wanted her to stop.
But she didn't.
She didn't know.
She didn't stop. So somewhere in the 4th or 5th grade, that sense of helplessness that you had not being able to get her to stop would very likely have produced thoughts of taking back some power and control over your mom to get the bitch to shut up. I mean, I'm sorry, but Gary, that's what we hear, and that's what one of the things we're looking to get a better understanding of.
During that thing, I usually took it out on other things instead of hurting her.
Living things?
Living things, killing animals.
Okay.
Killing animals. I stabbed a kid one time.
Okay.
Stabbed a kid with a knife.
Tell me about that.
It was down by Chinook, where I used to go to school. And boy was playing. I stabbed him in the side and didn't kill him. And I think it must have been about 6th grade, I think it was 7th grade. And that was at some time I was breaking out windows, throwing rocks at windows at
I'm
school.
not interested in that.
That's what I took my aggression on. I couldn't take it on my mom. I had to take it on my animals and
How many
and the
animals
kids.
did you kill?
I killed a lot of birds, but one cat suffocated in an ice chest, and shot babies at dogs and to hurt them, and threw rocks at my brother about that time. I think I was getting out of that though.
You couldn't take your aggressions out on your mom,
No, I couldn't.
but you could think about it.
I could think about it, and
What'd you think?
I thought about hurting her, so she'd shut up and leave me alone, and then
How did you think about hurting your mom?
killing her.
And how would you do that?
I thought with my hands, or I didn't have no guns or anything, so I didn't. It had to have been hands or.
And then after she was dead, what were you going to do in your head?
In my head, I don't know what I would do. I just wanted her to stop. One time there, they were going to put me in a special school. I didn't want that. My dad and my mom were arguing about it all the time. And it was for retarded people, and I wasn't retarded, I don't think. So I was mad at them for wanting to put me away from other kids. And wanting to hurt her. And hurt her bad.
What does that mean? Hurt her bad? Help me to understand that.
Just beat her up so she would leave me alone, and
How would you do that in your head?
my hands, beat her up with my hands, maybe use a knife.
What would you do with the knife?
I'd probably stab her with it. She was the big problem I had. I mean, my dad wasn't around that much. He was working all the time, and she was the one that was in control, and she was constantly trying to get me to do better in school, and I just couldn't do better. I wanted to have her stop, and the only way was to kill her, to hurt her bad.
Help me understand the knife.
Well, the knives are in the drawer. That would be, I use a knife on that, stab that boy, and use a knife on her if I wanted to. It's a way of killing, and
Okay. Walk me through what you were going to do with the knife in your head to your mother.
cut her throat so she wouldn't stop degrading me and putting me in. I couldn't remember things, and that was the only way I could think of hurting her to get her to stop.
When did you think about having sex with your mother?
When 14 or 15, I think.
Tell me about that. About the same time frame.
I'd see her out sunbathing, and I feel that she, she'd be good to have sex with, but she's my mother, and I never never really. She's the only woman in my life, other than neighbor girls, but so she. I get fantasies of having sex with her and wanting to, but being restricted on that part.
Explain to me, fantasies and restricted on that part.
Well, because if she's my mother, it's not right for having sex with your mother, and she was always in two pieces, and she'd come off work, she'd go in the backyard, so it was inviting to fantasize with her, because she was there sunbathing and tan, and it was a something that really intrigued me. It's all women like this. They're different, and it roused me to. I get a hard on sometimes, and it was the only time I had an opposite sex. In class, everybody's clothed and stuff like that. This was a woman that was sometimes laying down with no bra on. I mean, you couldn't see anything but bare skin. It was a turn on in a way, and I enjoyed looking out the window at her when she wasn't watching.
Did your mom enjoy that?
She didn't even know I was there. No, she was down just sunbathing, and then she'd turn over, and before she turned over, she always fastened her bra and turned over, and maybe a little bit up here to show, because she no tan marks. And I stared and looked out all the time.
And had your fantasies?
I had a fantasy, yes.
It makes sense to me. Makes sense that you would have a fantasy. Need to have you tell me what that was.
Just a fantasy of wanting to have sex, touch her, feel her body, have her show me how to have sex. Because mothers teach you a lot of things, It's just a fantasy. It's something she wouldn't do it, but it's.
What would, in your fantasy, what would your mom have you do to her?
Have me do to her. My fantasy would be to and explore, to find the different things what a woman has, girls have that guys don't have. Show me how to have sex, good sex. What the woman wants, and feel every bit of her body to enjoy a woman and have sex with her.
But at the same time in your life, and listen carefully to this, at the same time in your life, you also hate your mom for what she's doing to you.
Yes.
So how are those thoughts and fantasies colliding together? Because we know that happens. How are they colliding together in your head?
And colliding together in my head when she was just laying down there, she was more of a sex object than a mother, and more of the fantasies of having sex with her and nothing of having to kill her. It was two different things. When she was always Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, when she's down there, she's a sex fantasy, sex object. When she's up there trying to get me to read, and she's the other side. Something I hated. I loved the part of her being a sex object, but I didn't like the part of her being a mother. And
years after his murderous spree came to an end, the Green River Killer once again faces justice. As time takes its toll on Gary Ridgway, the number of victims grows once again, now to 49. The nation's most notorious serial killer spent his 62nd birthday pleading guilty to another Green River murder.
Becky Marrero's remains were found last December, 29 years after her family last saw her.
He walked into the courtroom like he's done many times before. For the Marreros, this is the first time, the moment they've been waiting 29 years for. And it's bittersweet.
How do you plead to the crime that's been charged?
guilty.
She is Gary Ridgway's 49th victim. Her 79-year-old mother, Sister Mary, and a niece she never got to meet, walked up to the podium, past Ridgway, and spoke for Becky.
He's a waste of society and a waste of space. If I had one thing to ask you today, it would be kill him. He has beat the system just like he beat his victims. I know he will burn in hell because you can't be God.
With a stoic look on his face, Ridgway appeared to listen.
I ask you again, what do you have to do in the state of Washington to get the death penalty?
But under a 2003 plea agreement, the judge's hands were tied.
Usually, when I sentence an individual, even for the most serious of crimes, I reach out with some humanity. In this case, I cannot. I can find no compassion.
Ridgway has been spared the death penalty in exchange for leading investigators to the bodies of the others. When it was his turn, he actually stood to speak to the Marreros.
I'm sorry for saying out,
Sir.
There were no words he could say.
We wanted the death penalty.
Now, the judge ordered Ridgway to pay a $50,000 fine, and this is the first time a judge has ever asked him to do that. His attorney says he won't be able to pay, though. He's in solitary confinement, and unlike other prisoners, he is not able to work in the prison.